All right, welcome everyone. This is the Ohio Arts Council's Rife Gallery programming series for our current exhibition, Quilt National 2025, which is produced and circulated by the Dairy Barn Art Center in Athens, Ohio. Today we are thrilled to present the artist Dre McLeod. As a brief reminder, everyone tuning in today is in listen-only mode, so feel free to utilize that chat function to ask questions. I'll be sure to get to them at the end of the talk. Please keep in mind that we are also presenting from separate locations, so if there's some variation of bandwidth or one of us freezes up or sound fluctuates, I'm going to thank you in advance for bearing with us. All right, welcome everybody and welcome Dre.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Um, that's me. Hello. Today I am going to share with you, you're going to see how my work has evolved over the past few years, how it's gone from this image on the left, which is a quilt, to the work I'm doing now, which is on the right. And I'm also going to highlight some pivotal moments that have changed the trajectory of my art practice. Some of those are big moments, some of them are small, but they've really affected my path and affected how my work has gone in good ways. Um, so, when I was in the first grade, I got first place in an art contest for a self portrait. And, you know, when adults ask children what they want to be when they grow up, I would say I want to be an artist. And at some point, an adult who I trusted and loved said, "You can't be an artist, you'll be a starving artist. You have to pick something." And, I was a kid and adults are always right. So I believed them. It was well meaning. I didn't grow up in a wealthy family. We struggled, and they didn't want me to struggle. So I was determined to pick something. And for some reason, what I ended up picking was fashion design. So when I was 15, my great grandmother, my Granny Grace, passed away, and they gave me her sewing machine. She was a quilter. Her mother was a quilter. I'm from West Virginia, and I come from a lot of quilters. So I had easy access to sewing lessons and a new sewing machine. So I started sewing when I was 15 to prepare for my future as a fashion designer. And I would make these little handbags. They were so shoddy, they were terribly made, but people would buy them from me, which was very sweet and supportive. Um, but I was on my path to my future, or so I thought. Um, I did end up going to Savannah College of Art and Design and majoring in fashion design. Um, I so I got a really good foundational arts education at SCAD. I learned I had lots of different drawing classes: figure drawing, 2D design, 3D design, color theory, painting, CAD. I gobbled up art history classes. Without paying attention, I was one art history class away from getting my minor, which is very on brand for me to just not pay attention to that kind of thing. But I really enjoyed the education I got at SCAD. But about halfway through, I realized that I hated fashion design and I wasn't very good at it, and I struggled. Um, it was really stressful. I had a hard time with it. You can see here some images from my senior collection and from another project that I did. They're not great. Also, this was 2008. Take that into consideration. Or it was earlier than 2008, actually. Um, but in the process of studying fashion design, I became absolutely obsessed with textiles. I was drawn to any designer who was like mixing prints. I did this project that was based on Kenzo at the time. Um, which was they were mixing prints. They were doing this really like textured, layered, beautiful, beautiful stuff. And I may have hated fashion design, but it did bring me to textiles. I was absolutely obsessed. I was using leather and fur and raw silk and boiled wool and any kind of patterns and prints and jacquards and anything I could get my hands on, I was in love with. Um, and for some reason, my senior year, when I should have been paying attention to my senior collection, which is what my entire education had been building to, I started making a quilt, which made no sense. I had like come across this quilting book, and I came from quilters. We had family quilts around, and I was always so drawn to them. And this book just sparked something in me, and I had to make a quilt. So, despite not having enough sleep or enough time to do literally anything, I decided to start making a quilt my senior year. And I did not finish it. This actually is some of my family quilts that I was obsessed with. Um, Despite not finishing it, I did become obsessed with quilting. Um, and so I graduated in 2008 and I moved to Los Angeles, and I really floundered. I did not know what I wanted to do. I still was holding on to this message that I can't be an artist because I'll be a starving artist. And I had always had this like well of creative energy, and I didn't know what to do with it. Um, so I sort of just I worked in retail. I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I wanted to figure it out, but I didn't know how. But I was really suppressing that I just wanted to be an artist. Um, so I moved to Los Angeles. I got just a regular job, and I quilted as a hobby on the side. And I finally finished that quilt that I started my senior year. It was the first quilt I ever made. It's this one here. Um, it is, I don't know if you can tell, it's kind of falling apart. Since I finished it in, I think, late 2008, I have used and loved it like crazy, because it set me off on a path that I'm on now. So I'm in Los Angeles. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life, and I'm quilting as a hobby. And I had made just a few quilts by the time I started working for this woman. Her name is Suzanne Reinstein, and she was a very well-known interior designer, um, in the interior design industry in Los Angeles, especially. But she was a big deal. And for some reason, I ended up working as her personal assistant. And working for her was another very big pivotal moment for me that changed the way that I make work now. Suzanne was also obsessed with textiles, so we really got along. She had an amazing collection of antique textiles from her world travels. She designed textiles for the interior industry. The chairs there, in the picture of this room, that's one of her fabric designs. Um, but she had these like very wealthy, elegant taste. Like, her clients had such great taste. She had amazing taste. She was incredibly talented. But she had her interior design studio. And in the interior design studio, there was a library of fabrics from vendors. And I think most interior design studios have the same thing. You just have this library so that you can refer to fabrics when you're designing, so that you can present things to clients. These fabrics were gorgeous. They were so opulent and expensive and beautiful, like beautifully made, just incredible fabrics like I had never seen before. But the vendors would often discontinue these fabrics, and they would instruct people to discard the samples. Um, and it was like heartbreaking to see these samples thrown away. They weren't very big. It was always just a few at a time, but it was hard to watch. So I said, can I please just take these home? Like I will, they weren't big pieces, but if you make quilts, you don't need big pieces to make a quilt. So they started giving me all the discontinued fabric scraps. Suzanne also had an upholsterer who would reupholster antique furniture for her clients. She would make new furniture for the clientele. And that upholsterer started giving me the scraps, not only of Suzanne's clients, but every other client she had. So now I'm getting bigger pieces and I'm basically like building this collection of free, gorgeous, expensive fabric. It was it was a dream. And at the same time, I was learning about textile waste, not just textile waste in the fashion industry, but not just in the fashion industry on an individual level. Um, I started learning about statistics of the amount of textile waste thrown in landfills every year. The the average American throws away about 40 pounds of textiles every year. A lot of donated clothing ends up on beaches. There's I can't remember the name of the place. I think it's in Ghana, but it's in West Africa. That a lot of our textile waste just ends up there. We dump it on other countries, on other people. And so I was learning about this incredibly depressing textile waste. I was seeing it on a micro level in my world. And from then on, I committed myself to only using repurposed materials. I could not think of any reason to use new materials since I was obsessed with textiles and this was my chosen medium. I could see no reason to use anything other than what's already there. So that was a huge pivotal moment for me because to this day I still only use repurposed fabric. This is me. Look at this baby. Oh, she's so young. This is what I started quilting after collecting all of those gorgeous fabrics. Um, I just I just was quilting kind of as a hobby. I was still kind of floundering, working for Suzanne. Um, didn't really know what I wanted to be. Deep down, obviously, I knew that I wanted to be an artist. That was there from childhood. But it was really hard for me to break free of this mentality of scarcity. Um, I even went through a phase where I was going to go back to grad school, which I think every, 25, 26-year-old does. But I was at least quilting on the side. I was quilting as a hobby and deep down secretly wanting to do it as a living. So these were the first few quilts I was making. I did a few Bargello quilts, and these were created with that fabric that I got from Suzanne. I didn't, so I was obsessed with quilting at this point. But I wasn't doing a lot of like traditional patchwork, like the patchwork that my ancestors were doing. I'm always like, I want to do my own thing. That's just like, I want to be different. That's just who I am. Not that Bargello is that different. It's a pretty common pattern, but I thought I was doing something very different. And I only did a few quilts until I started making these pixelated images. And so now I'm really like getting into the quilting. I'm having people ask me to make quilts for them, a lot of like baby quilts and lap quilts, because quilts are expensive. So they were doing smaller pieces, smaller quilts. But I quickly shifted into this pixelated imagery. And now I'm feeling like I think I can be an artist. I think this is what I need to be doing. So I was really focused on it. On the picture here on the right, you can really see some of these gorgeous fabrics that I was able to that were gifted to me, thankfully. They were really stunning. And it took me years. It took me years to finally use all of them. Here are some more of those pixelated image quilts. On the left, this is Edgar Allan Poe. Uh, I my mother is a Poe, and there's this lore that my family is related to him, which is probably not accurate, but we toy with that anyways. And then the skull with the dagger on the right. We have Krampus on the left and a jellyfish here on the right. So I spent about 2 or 3 years just like focusing on these pixelated quilts and really wanting to just be an artist. Like I think at this point I said, I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to try to be an artist. I kind of gave up on the grad school thought. It was a fleeting idea because I was still suppressing that I wanted to be an artist. And I realized if I go to grad school, I can't focus on that and on making art. And what I really want to do is make art. So I finally just admitted it to myself. And I was enjoying the quilts. Quilting is in my blood and I love doing it. I love quilts, but I wanted something more. I wanted to do something more. And I wanted my work to be seen as fine art and not as craft, which is such a struggle that women artists, especially who work in fiber arts or folk arts, kind of feel that desire to not just be seen as crafters. Even though there's nothing wrong with craft. Craft is beautiful and very skilled. But I also was having this desire to focus more on fine art. And that's when I reached the next pivotal moment that really shifted my path and shifted my practice. These might not look like much, but they really changed a lot for me. A family friend asked me, because so many people were asking me to make quilts, a family friend asked me to make something out of her grandmother's vintage handkerchiefs and doilies. Handkerchiefs and doilies are like delicate, they're thin. I was like, I can't make a quilt out of these. And she said, I don't care. I don't want it to be, it doesn't need to be a quilt. I don't care if it's a quilt. I just want you to make something. So that kind of like gave me permission to start thinking beyond just quilts, beyond what I was doing, because I couldn't give myself that permission. But luckily, someone else did. And I made these basically textile collages out of her grandmother's handkerchiefs. And this really set me on a new path of a different way of working with textiles and playing with different media along with the fabric. So then I spent several years focusing on basically these textile collages. I was doing a lot of like layered things. I was working with a lot of what I considered kind of creepy, like themes, creepy like things. You noticed some skulls in the pixelated quilts. Obviously, Edgar Allan Poe is like kind of creepy. Scorpions, bugs, anything that can be kind of like icky or uncomfortable. And my thought process was that quilts were comforting. And I think as humans, we feel fear over sometimes things that are innocuous or don't need to be fearful. So I was trying to take the power away from the fear by making these things in soft, delicate fabrics. So I'm working with these collages a little bit more and just playing with texture. A lot of this fabric is that donated fabric, that expensive, expensive, beautiful stuff. And I was really enjoying mixing mixing the patterns, mixing the fabric in the way that I wanted to do when I first became obsessed with textiles back when I was at SCAD. Um, these are the piece on the left here is kind of the first one that really sparked this layering and kind of creating these aura outlines around the pieces. And I started incorporating beading, which is like just another layer of sort of craft almost. Um, I did I did a whole Dr. Teeth in the Electric Mayhem from the Muppets. This is Janice from that Muppet band. So I was having a lot of fun with these collages and giggling at myself as I was finishing these silly things. I've got more scorpions here, worshiping the moon on this mandala sort of very large piece that I did. It was my first kind of like round, other than a piece other than a square or rectangle, trying to do a different orientation. Another eyeball mandala, and then a foaming eyeball. So I was trying to get real weird with it, but still keeping the quilting. There, you can see the foaming eyeball is on a base of just a quilt. So at this point, I'm kind of, I'm figuring out something different. I'm finding my path a little bit. And I'm just doing a lot of experimenting and trying to figure out what my voice and what my style is as an artist. And this was, I think, 2013 to 2015 is what this whole era is from. Oh, yeah. And then we have this vulture. There's a menu at the top. Okay, it's gone. I have this vulture, which is beloved. I love this piece, and I think it's been well loved by other people as well. This is probably my biggest, most tedious textile collage. It's called The Undertaker, and it's meant to kind of envision the vulture, which might be seen as creepy, as something like majestic and beautiful, because they're kind of misunderstood. They don't hunt or kill. They just clean up the mess of everybody else. So we love the vulture. So in 2015. So around 2015, I started making products. I started making clothing. I still wanted to make art. I still considered myself an artist, but all of my time and focus really, really shifted to clothing and products. I was still using repurposed fabric exclusively, but I was finding that people were more apt to spend money on clothing or products than they were on art. And I also was still really searching for my voice and my style. So I spent a few years on the clothing. And if you are here because you're familiar with my work, this is probably how you were introduced to me. There was like a great reception of this work, of these products. I was making the patched jackets, these dusters from vintage tapestries and tablecloths and quilts. And I really neglected my art practice, but there is a gift in everything. And the gift here was I was able to experiment on a smaller level, especially with the patches on the back of the jackets. I was able to experiment with different applications of the fabric and different themes, different symbols, that I kind of felt more confident doing that on this scale than in art. And despite Sewing since I was 15. I didn't have a lot of confidence in sewing, and I felt a lot of frustration in sewing. And this era of like making products um, kind of helped me to just like practice in different ways of sewing that helped build a lot more confidence to me. And I mean, it took me 19 years of sewing to feel like I think I might be good at this. So that's another gift of this era. Um, but in 2019, I reached the next pivotal moment, um, which Lawbird Bar is a local bar, and the owners are great people. They're really wonderful people. They have been supportive of my work for a really long time, and they asked me to make a large scale artwork for their establishment. Um, and I was really excited, but I was really nervous because it was 4 feet by 8 feet. And I had been working with new techniques. I had started working with applique techniques that I had not done on a big scale before. All of the quilts I had done were patchwork. So when I went to make this piece, I kept thinking of it as something different than a quilt. And I had to reframe it for myself because I had made quilts bigger than this. Um, but them asking me to make this work refocused my energy to art. It allowed me to start thinking about art again and give more attention to it. I still was making products. I was still giving attention to those, but it helped shift me back into kind of my art practice mode rather than my like commerce mode, if that makes sense. And I'm so grateful. This piece is really beautiful. Every time I see it in person, I'm just like so amazed that I made that. And now I think about that about everything I make, but this one was a big pivotal moment for me. So in 2019, I start working a little bit more on my art practice. And I started experimenting with geometric and organic shapes overlapped and having this translucency, which you can also see here in the Lawbird piece. So I'm working with transparency, which was really fun to do in fabrics. I think one of my strengths is color, mixing color, arranging color. So that's been a really fun thing for me to do with arranging color. This is another piece for a local business, Dough Mama. She asked me to make a custom piece for them. And so now I'm just on a roll. I'm just back to my art practice. And I did all of these pieces I think I did all of these pieces in 2019. I was asked to make an album cover, which was like that made me feel cooler than I've ever felt in my life. And now I just want to make album covers all the time. But I was so grateful to be asked to do that. And it was just like right at the perfect time where I was getting back into my practice. I had played with clothing a little bit, which helped spark this body of work. So that was a really fun project for me. So then I start getting a little bit bigger, start expanding kind of to a new body of work, feeling very inspired by things that inspired me 10 years earlier, back in college. And then I also started to bring back in more of that embellishment with like the beading, which I had done in the collages. And now I was bringing into this new sort of like method of creating. Very quickly moving into the next pivotal moment, which was 2020. Like many people, I have lifelong mental health issues, and the pandemic really exacerbated those issues. Um, and then we're just like in the house. We have all of this time. I had a part-time job and I was furloughed, and now I had all this time, and I had been getting back into my art practice, and I wanted to be making art, and then now I have all this time to be making art. But the previous work that I had done, the 2019 stuff, you can see some of it behind me there in this picture. Um, it was really playing with the process, playing with that transparency, with new geometric shapes and organic shapes, and larger scale and applique, different methods. I was playing with all of that stuff, but there wasn't really a lot of meaning behind it. It was more process based, I think. But then in 2020, my mental health was in such a bad place. And I've always been a person who is, I feel things deeply. My feelings are like, have always been very overwhelming to me, and I feel them all very deeply. And it's hard to like figure out what to do with them sometimes. Um, but I had a lot of time to make art, and I had a lot of feelings, and those two things kind of just came together to where I started making art to navigate those feelings, to express them. They were helping me work through them. Creating art was helping me work through the feelings. Um, and now the work is similar to the 2019 work, but I started kind of almost assigning feelings to the geometric shapes, to the organic shapes. Everything now was containing all of these feelings that I had. Um, I started working with sort of architectural shapes, still kind of with the organic shapes, but there was more kind of an architectural element to it. And I felt like I was almost creating a world, like another dimension or another world where the feelings live. Like when I'm not internalizing the feelings, when I'm not existing with them, they have to go somewhere. And this is the world that they live in. And sometimes I can visit them there. Um, During this era, here's another close up actually of the last piece. I don't know if you can see the detail of um, kind of the stitching and the texture on the fabrics and the colors. Um, but this is some of the inspiration that was kind of sparking this body of work. I was looking a lot to brutalist architecture and design, and a little bit in Art Deco as well, which you saw in a piece a couple pieces ago. Um, Here you can see some of that influence in these like architectural, almost buildings, kind of. And this is the world where those feelings live. And this was such a pivotal time for me because since then, that is what motivates my work is emotions. Um, I've been able to use my work to express and navigate my emotions, and to do something more productive with them other than kind of wallowing. Um, and yeah, I'm really grateful for that kind of insight into myself and into my art, and using it as almost therapy. These pieces that you're seeing are all from 2020. It was a very, very productive year of making art. And I actually had a show at 934 Gallery, a two-person show with Catherine Chinko, which was it was either January or February. I think it was January 2021. So I spent 2020 making work for that show, and it was all about the feelings. Um, This one's called Intrusive Thoughts, which is, we've all had those. And then here's just another example. This was a commissioned piece where I'm kind of still creating that little universe where the feelings are living. And I think this one's where the good feelings live. And this one, I'm just going to touch on this one real quick. This is I have to tell you, it is shocking that I have not cried yet during this talk today, because I'm a crier and over every little thing, good or bad. But this one is called Tears, and it's basically a temple where you go to cry. You can either physically stand in front of it and cry, or it's somewhere you can go in your mind, whatever that be, when you have big feelings and they make you cry. This is where you go to do that. Oh, there's more crying. How about it? Uh, so now I'm I've reached, this is about 2023. I'm going to say early 2023. I've started working on a new body of work that is inspired by Baroque art. And the idea behind it is Baroque is gorgeous, especially when you look at the inside of Baroque cathedrals, which is a lot of, which I think I have. Yeah. When you look at the absolute ostentatious ornamentation, it's a religious experience, and it was meant to be a religious experience. But I wanted to, with this body of work, that is what I'm currently working on, to kind of like reclaim that divinity for humanity. It's not about religion or power or wealth. It's about human connection and human beings and yourself and the divinity in just being human. So this is the body of work that I'm currently working on. And this was the first piece that I did in this body of work, which was meant to sort of worship the idea of rest, which is in our kind of capitalistic society is sort of not always honored, because we are working so hard all the time, and dealing with a lot. So this was meant to really honor rest. And this was meant to kind of be the foundation of this Baroque kind of body of work. But in the beginning of creating this body of work, I went through a very deep and serious and difficult grief. It was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. And it kind of, I want to get to this other, there we go. It greatly shifted what this body of work meant to me. And it turned into, I mean, it still encapsulated the theme of like humanity and the divinity of humanity, because grief is so human. But it was almost maybe the perfect time, the perfect body of work to be creating when going through something very hard, because this has kind of been the shift of what the body of work is about. And I'm kind of incorporating some surrealist elements as well, which are, I'm going to go back to this one, which I've kind of started to incorporate here in this piece, which is called Divine Self. But all of these works, I don't know if I have to mention, but I will. All of these works are created with repurposed fabric, and applique quilting techniques. But with this new work here, which is deeply about grief, I'm also experimenting with almost like relief, three-dimensional relief, but still using textiles. So you can see here, the pieces are kind of coming out from the background, and they're set inside this antique frame. I feel like I'm running out of time, but I can't tell. I was afraid I wouldn't be talking long enough, and yet I have.
Doing great.
Thank you. um, let's see. This is another piece from this newer body of work. It's also 2023. These were both kind of towards the end of 2023. And here I'm trying to bring in more of that surrealism while keeping kind of the ornate ornamentation of the Baroque, and still set in the antique frame. And all of these pieces, this is sort of meant to be a garden. Um, all of these pieces are set out from the background of the piece, so they're all kind of three-dimensional in a way. Um, I Much of this body of work, it was displayed at Roy G. Biv Gallery in March of 2024. So this is me there at the gallery. Um, so now I'm going to share some pieces that have not been seen publicly. This one I did share on social media, but there's two other pieces I'm going to share that I have not shown anyone. Um, they have not been exhibited, so you get to see these for the first time. And they're really kind of indicative of where my work is headed. This is a very large 6 foot wide by 7 foot high. I'm calling it a tapestry. It's sort of a quilt. It's sort of a tapestry. It's made with applique techniques, but it is still part of this kind of Baroque body of work. And it's called Victory. And it is about how going through that very, very hard thing, that grief, actually has made me stronger. It's made me fortified and more emotionally healthy, despite it being very hard. And I'm going to show you some close-ups here. You can see we have, there's just some detail. I've been working a lot with pattern, which I've kind of pulled from quilting. And in my research, I'm finding a lot of like tile flooring that was created in the Baroque era matches a lot of like quilting blocks that have been used like in Appalachian and American quilting. So this would be, this is a tile pattern, but it's also a tumbling blocks quilt pattern. In the border of this piece, I have like sort of a traditional tapestry style, but we have pineapple weed, amaranth, and dandelion, which are all edible weeds. So I was thinking about things that are like weeds, are kind of like seen as undesirable, and we pick them and kill them, but they're actually, some of them are edible and can, feed us. There's some ornamentation there, and the archway, including a little shipwreck and a honey badger. This is another new piece. I did only finish 3 pieces last year, but 2 of them were these extremely large tapestries. So these took quite a long time to create. This one is actually about hard feelings, bad, negative, big, heavy feelings, like grief, for example, can make you feel very isolated, because you are the one feeling them in that moment. They're inside you. It's very easy to feel like you're the only person who's ever felt that, but it's actually a very human experience. And when we can connect with other people, we realize that they've experienced it too. And it helps to kind of feel a little bit less isolated, because we're all just humans being humans. The border of this one is berries, gooseberries, raspberries, and blueberries. And I'm again playing with pattern, on the sort of like wood grain on the trees. This pattern play in the last 2 pieces is something that I'm excited to work with a little bit more in my future work. This is, I do have one more piece that is the most recently created, which I don't have to share with you today. So we'll say we'll pretend this is the most recent piece. But this one is about having your ancestors or your spirit guides, or having something bigger than you that kind of helps keep you safe, um, helps you feel less alone, is watching over you. Maybe that's something that you feel. I've really been trying to channel that, especially as I've leaned into quilting. And I come from women who quilt, and I think about them a lot when I'm making what I make, because I I wonder a lot. I didn't know most of them super well, but I wonder what their life would have been like if they had my life. I have more choices than they did. Um, I'm able to turn quilting, what they did, into something of my own, and hopefully a fine art that will take me places. And I often wonder what they would think of that. So I wanted to make this piece to honor them, but it's also a piece that I feel like they're with me. I'm the little horse figurine in the middle, and they're kind of guiding me and um, helping me through. I have a couple more slides that are about some like aesthetic inspiration. Do we have time for those?
Absolutely, go for it.
Okay. Oh, hello, there's that again. Oh, and I forgot I had a close up of it. Oh, and actually, real quick, um, this piece, this quilt in the top right, that is a quilt that my great grandmother, my Granny Grace, whose sewing machine I had, she made that. And the kind of tunic that the figures are wearing is inspired by that quilt. Um, so I just have like four artists that I wanted to share. A lot of people ask me, where do I get my inspiration? And I sometimes wonder if, because that could mean a lot of different things. Um, Obviously, much of my inspiration is feelings. I don't know if I established that. I got a lot of feelings, but when I wonder if people are asking about my like aesthetic inspirations, so I wanted to share that a little bit. I just have four artists I'm going to share. One is Sonia Delaney. I was looking at her work a lot. Um, Especially during like 20 2019, and when I was making clothing as well. She was a French artist born in Ukraine who founded Orphism. And so she did these like beautiful graphic works with a lot of geometric shapes. But what I admired about her is how she translated those to wearable art and costume. So I looked to her a lot for inspiration. Maxfield Parrish was an American painter and illustrator. Um, and he kind of sparked the golden age of illustration, which is another kind of aesthetic era that I looked to a lot. Um, but his works kind of, they glowed. They were really beautiful. There was a lot of neoclassical inspiration in his work. And I really admired like his horizon. Like he always had this low horizon or a very high horizon. And I think that makes something interesting, which is also what I learned from David Lynch, the filmmaker. But when I was at SCAD, they had an exhibition of his work at the museum. And honestly, like experiencing artwork in real life is magical. It is so different than seeing it on a screen. It is compelling and transformative. And I saw his work in real life, and it totally changed me. And I feel like that about most art that I've seen in real life, to be honest. Um, the next one, many of you may have heard of, Elsa Scaparelli. She was an Italian designer in the 1930s, I believe. But she had a lot of really surrealist influences in her fashion design. And I just really appreciate how she brought kind of this very surreal, these surreal themes into clothing. And her work is beautiful. And her fashion house is still working, making clothing to this day. And the current designer is absolutely blowing it away. It's so stunning. So even though I did not become a fashion designer, I still find fashion really compelling and influential. Um, Kay Nielsen was a Danish illustrator during the golden age of illustration. you may notice some influences in my work from his work. I really appreciated. I like kind of a flat composition, and I like how he did that. It has a lot of medieval influences in that way, but I've always been drawn to the way he renders clouds and smoke and little ornamentation. So he's been a big influence for me as well. And the biggest influence of all is quilting. These are my family quilts here on the right, and of course my Granny Grace, my very dear granny, who was the quilter, and I wouldn't have been quilting as long as I have if it or sewing at least as long as I have if it wasn't for her. So that's it. I'm a quilter, sort of.
Wonderful. That's really lovely. Well, you've already got many comments about
Oh,
how much folks enjoy your creativity and your experimentation. So, folks, if you have questions, pop them into the comments and I'll take care of that from there. So, it is clear that you have that minor in art history, whether you have the certificate or not.
thank you.
Yeah, in both in your work and also how you speak about your work. So it's just a delight to kind of be able to go through that journey with you. What I noticed in your transitions in 2020 is not just the difference from maybe one icon within a work or pixelation or something that focus on an individual component is you began to express depth
Mhm.
and uh, things felt like either you could go into a piece or it was coming out of. And so I'm curious if you can speak a little bit to uh, how that came about. Were you sketching these ideas or were they coming to you and following through in that way? Can you take us a little bit through that process?
Yeah, I think that sort of like that dimensional quality, I was really like I've always wanted to or for the past few years, I guess, I've been trying to create this almost surrealist. I don't want to be a surrealist, I guess, but I want some level of surrealism. And to me, like Trompe l'oeil feels almost surreal. So I was trying to create that in some of the works, especially like on the frames or the work, the dimension coming out of the work. Um, so I think that's a little bit of an influence for that. Um, I sketch everything before I create it, and then I draw it out to size, and then I make it in fabrics. Yeah, I think this, I don't know, I guess beyond that, I know that I was like really looking at a lot of surrealist art at the time, but beyond that, I haven't really pinpointed other than, um, I guess trying to create space. Um,
Oh, I love that. I
yeah,
think that's it. I
yeah.
think that's it.
Okay, done talking.
Yeah,
Create
that's
space.
wonderful. It's an excellent because it talks about time and place too.
Yeah,
Time and place, we were all so isolated. So for you, you created more depth, more space in
yes.
that time as well. So that's wonderful. You talk a lot about transparency in the applique process, and I see a lot of layering that creates those additional colors and that sense of depth in the like fiddly bits of these works that are so impressive. But it looks like some of them are not actually layered. They are additional colors that you are color mixing in your brain and
Oh
putting
yeah,
down,
that's exactly what's happening.
which is even more wild. Like when I look closer at them in those details, you can see that some of them have some transparent, maybe organza,
No, I don't have
but
any of that.
none of that. So it's
None of
all
that.
color. You're talking about
Yes.
transparency, and there's no transparency,
No, it's just fake. Hang on, let me go to one. It's all smoke and mirrors.
which is even more impressive.
Thank you.
For folks that don't sew or haven't tried to sew, give it a shot and you're going to look at these pieces and feel very differently. Um, yeah, so all of that, that none of this is a one single shape that's layered over. Those are
No, it's all tiny little individual pieces. It's, you said the word fiddly, and let me tell you, that is what it is.
it's it's even more impressive to recognize the amount of um, mental color mixing, planning,
Mhm.
and execution that takes place in order to make something look so naturally transparent. Like this looks like a puddle of pink over these really dimensional pieces. So shout out to you on that. That's incredible.
Thank you.
Um, can you talk about the importance of that in your work? Like, why is it so, is it the gratification of that intense craft? Um, color theory? Is it both?
I think it's
Tell
both.
me more.
I think I'm like obsessed with color. And I, I like to me, this is just arranging color. So I think gratification is a great word for it. I do a lot of giggling when I finish something because I'm like, I can't believe I just made this. Uh, yeah, I think this is just like an obsession with color theory, honestly.
And I mean, it roots into optical illusions as well, like that
Uh,
op art. Like you have so many intersections of art historical practices that are just your voice. You definitely have those flavors in this pot, but like it is definitely your voice.
hmm.
Um, so tell me, how do you identify when you have settled upon the visual that you're going to then expand and create into a piece? How do you know that that is ready for prime time?
um, I don't know. I guess I don't. I think part of it is like I have ideas in my head, and I have to get them out. And so I get one out, and I'm like, nope, this wasn't quite it. Got to do another one. It's like I just keep doing them until I get the thing out, and maybe I'll never get the thing out, but the thing is always evolving. I don't know if this makes any sense. Um, yeah. And also, so I sketch everything. I use a sketchbook. I have an idea. I start sketching the elements of the idea. I don't like drawing. I know that sounds crazy. Drawing makes me nervous. So I usually like do a rough sketch, and then I get enough to a point where I'm like, yeah, the idea that's from my head is kind of here in the real world now. I'm going to start drawing it to size for the final piece. And then I kind of focus on the details then, because I don't feel like drawing them twice. And sometimes it just like turns into something else. And I think that's why I'm like, nope, this wasn't it. Got to keep going. It's just it's like a constant process.
So, Dre, something I feel like this will probably be our closeout question. Something that you really focused on within your talk is the importance of being open to the opportunity to say yes to ideas that may have been latent.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you could leave this group with a kind of cohesive thought about what you discovered in going back and looking at your journey and what you would like to give to others in the artistic community there.
I think a lot of, I might cry. I think, I think a lot of when I reflect on it, especially these like pivotal moments, there were so many times when I was waiting to be given permission, or I was denied by someone. And those really like changed my path. And I wish that in some instances, because sometimes another person has an idea that will spark something in you, but I wish that in a lot of these instances, I had given myself permission, that I had trusted myself enough to do the things that I wanted to do instead of like waiting for somebody else to give me permission.
That is a perfect place to end it. And I trust that you will do that go forward, but also stay open to the opportunities expressed in relationship and camaraderie. And so, for anyone looking for more of Dre's work, where can they find it?
So currently I don't have anything on display. I've been hibernating and making. But if you want to view works on my website, it's www.dremcleod.com. You can also check me out on Instagram at it's Dre McLeod.
Perfect. Dre, thank you again so much for the generosity of your time and talent. Thank you all for joining us for this artist talk by Dre McLeod as a part of our programming for the Quilt National 2025, the Best in Contemporary Quilts. Special thank you to the Ohio Arts Council's board, the Ohio legislature, and the governor who support the Ohio Arts Council, this great space, and of course, Ohio artists. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.